So, what do you want young people to know and what can they do about the
Well,
situation?
I want the young people to know that a migrant worker is a human being and not just a migrant worker. The word migrant worker is a broad brush. A migrant worker is just like your statistic. A migrant worker is a human being. We have 10 fingers, we have two eyes, we have a family, we have a normal life. Being a migrant worker, it's a category. That's just a category. And what I want them to know about that category is one, we are human beings. But being in Canada, we are not treated as human beings. We are treated as second class in Canada. We are denied a lot of things. In Canada, we are denied basic human rights. We are denied basic labor standards. So being in Canada, we are not treated as human beings. I want young people to know that. I want young people to know that the food that they eat, if they eat well, if they eat healthy food, that would in turn impact their health. And if they are not concerned about the food that they eat, that the food that they eat can also be a slow form of poison. What do I mean by that? People need to pay attention. They need to pay attention to who's growing the food and how the food is being grown. And the other thing I want young Canadians to know is that Canada is a champion for human rights. Around the world, people look up to Canada. Around the world, people look up to Canada. Being silent, it is not accepted. Being silent means that you're accepting the situation as it is. And the situation as it is not just. I want young Canadians to know that I am fighting for a Canadian food system that is healthy, that is sustainable, and that is just. I want young people to know and to be aware about the food and to fight for a Canadian food system that is healthy, that is sustainable, and that is just. And if you have a food system that's healthy, sustainable, and just, it is the foundation for a really, really bright and prosperous society. We cannot do without food. And even better yet, when you know that your food is grown in a healthy way, sustainable and a just way, that is peace of mind. And that food is very, very important. From now until we go to the grave, food will always be important. So work towards a food system that is sustainable and that is just.
Wow, that's really helpful for us to know some things that we can do and some things to think about. I would like to ask you one last question. How were you able to, because you live in Canada now, so how were you able to become a citizen or to live here? As I've done some of like my own research, I think there are a lot of migrant workers, not all, but some migrant workers actually want to become citizens of Canada. And I understand that's sometimes not very easy. That's sometimes very difficult to become a citizen. So can you tell me about how your story about becoming a Canadian?
Okay, a couple of things is one, the thing is that being a migrant farm worker, I've tried to summarize it by DET. We are denied so much, we are excluded from so much, and we are tied. In Canada, to access all those things that we are denied and excluded from and tied to the other way around it is to access to become a permanent resident or become a citizen. And to be a migrant worker means you're denied so much, you're excluded from so much. Is that the way life is meant to be? Is that the way we are meant to live? To live in a state of fear, in a state of hopelessness, or to live a life of freedom, a life of fulfillment, a life of abundance? And to access all those things is to apply for permanent residence. But in Canada, migrant workers is very, very difficult for migrant workers to apply for these things. I'll tell you why. Because the policies of the government, they put the bars, the requirements so high that the average person cannot meet the bars. You have to write an exam. You must be working in Canada year round. They make you must pay so much. They make it so difficult that it's very, very, it's out of the reach of the ordinary workers. For me personally, I could not apply under any of the ways, the traditional ways or the main ways people could apply to live in Canada. I could not. My circumstance was so different that I had to apply on the humanitarian and compassionate grounds. Very, very difficult ground. And what was my story? When I came to Canada, I had two kids and they were without a mom because their mom had passed in 2005. So I have two kids without a mom, and now I am so far away from them in Canada, earning my livelihood. And that was the basis for my application. It was a very unusual, very extreme situation. And that kind of application is called a humanitarian and compassionate application, an H&C application. And that is very, very unusual, and that I would call it, it was just a crack that I was able to end. It was that crack that allowed me to put in an application. And that is not a very common thing or easy thing for other migrant workers.
I want to thank you so much. I learned so much today about migrant workers and migrant farm workers. And I'm wondering if you have anything else you want to leave us with today.
Of course. Now that I am living in Canada, all those things that I was denied of, now I can access them. All those things I was excluded from, now I am included. That thing that I was tied to, now I am free. Living a life of fear or living a life of hope. And Canada there is enough for everybody to live a happy life. There is enough. Canada is the second largest country in the world. Canada, we all know, is underpopulated. Canada produces a lot. There's enough for everybody. But because of unjust policies of the politicians, PPP, our poverty, P, is because of the unjust policies, P, of the politicians. And what I would like people to know, that there's power in our hands as a consumer, as a student, as an artist, whatever skill you have, there's power in your hands. As a voter, there's power in your hands. I want you to discover that power you have in your hands, to write your book, to sing your song, to do whatever skill that you have. Use it and push people to take action. That's why I'd like to thank you for this opportunity and also congratulate you, because you've used the skill that you have to create awareness and to bring awareness. When people become aware of things, their thoughts, their words, their actions can change. And that is the kind of change that we need in Canada. Canada can be a free country. Canada can be a better country. And we have the power to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two small questions I just remembered.
No worries.
What did you do? What work did you do in your country? You said you weren't able to find a job in your country. So what was the work that you did in your country?
Before I came to Canada, I did many different kinds of work, but all of them, they were lateral jobs related to agriculture. Just before I came to Canada, I was self-employed doing 5 different things. I was a beekeeper. I was a shop, how do you call it? Somebody who operates a convenience store. I had a small greenhouse. I was a middleman. I used to buy produce from farmers and I used to sell inputs to them. 5 different things, and I thought my income was diversified, but doing those 5 different things in the countryside, everything was related to agriculture. So a hurricane really messed up everything, right? And I need to backtrack a little. I did many different kind of jobs related to agriculture. But when you go to the global financial crisis in 2008, the global financial crisis was one. We had the WTO ruling, we had black sickle toka infestation, we had varroa mite infestation in beekeeping. All of these, it was a series of events that really forced me to a difficult situation, and the hurricane literally was the final nail in the coffin.
Wow. So all those things happened, and then of course your wife passed away, and that added more all these hardships all at once.
Yes, like a domino effect.
Domino effect. So what do you do? What's the work that you do now in Canada?
I am an outreach worker. I serve migrant workers, and even right now, today's payday, I am a Simco. I serve a lot of migrant workers. Being a migrant worker means you do not have the same rights as a Canadian. It means that you're vulnerable. I want workers to read that. Three words I want to leave. Vulnerability. I want vulnerable. Understand the meaning of vulnerable. Understand the word denied. To be denied, and understand the word transformation. To transform somebody's life who is in a vulnerable situation. These are three words I would like to leave the viewers or the people who people who are within air reach. So three words I would really like you to focus on. There's not enough time that you can understand that somebody is vulnerable, somebody is denied so much, and to transform that person's life. Yeah.
Okay. So when you work with these workers, do you bring awareness to them, and do you connect them to things that will help them as well?
Exactly. Empower them as much as possible. And the other word I forgot to include is dignity, right? To do all of that with some element of dignity. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And thank you so much. I think I'm going to stop here because
this is a never-ending conversation.
Yeah, it's a never-ending conversation. And I think the next thing is, I know that you have a book I would love to read. I have a book I want to share with you. We're going to do a book swap. And what we do, I'm sure we're going to both have more questions to ask each other.
Absolutely.
But my hope is that, I grew up here in Canada, and certainly we learn about farms. We have Trip to the Farm. Farms, I also am an educator. I've taken kids to the farms, and not one of those trips involved meeting a migrant farm worker, learning about the migrant farm workers who come from the Caribbean, which is a country where my family's from, and a lot of the kids I work with and teach, we don't learn about that. So
invisibility is one word. They make us invisible, and the whitewashing of
That's right.
And that's the point too, right? Whose story are we familiar with? Whose story? Is it the victor or the victim? And very few, and that's what you try to do. Hear the story straight from the horse's mouth. Because whose story to wear is always somebody else's story, and never the victim's story.
That's right.
And that's the important thing. That's what I want Canadians to do, to take a side. Take a side. Do not stay neutral. Take a side. The moment you get to know the facts, you must take a side. And I know whose side you take, but whose story are you hearing? From what you know, whose story? Is it the victor or is it the victim's story?
That's right. Yes. Well, we want to hear all the stories, and that's why writing books is so important.
Exactly. And to tell only part of the story is literally lying to you. The story is complete only when the whole story is told, right? The whole story has been told.
That's right. That's so right. So thank you so much for your time today. I know you need to go. You're at work, taking your precious time to share with us. And we will definitely be back again to talk some more about your experience as a migrant worker, and your books and my books, and I have so many more questions to ask you. So I'll save those for another day. Thank you again, Gabriel.